This week on The Record, 4 more years, President-elect Donald Trump prepares to return to the Oval Office. What this election says about the direction of the nation, and will a new Congress rush Trump's agenda into law? U.S. Senator Eric Schmitt and Congressman-elect Wesley Bell are on the record. Plus, is the party of Ronald Reagan dead? What Trump's ascent to the top of the GOP and the cultural and political shifts within it means for the direction of the Republican Party. It's all coming up right now. Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. Donald Trump heads back to the White House after defeating Vice President Kamala Harris in a historic race, the 45th president, now poised to become the 47th. Donald Trump's defeat of Kamala Harris was a dominant one. He swept all 7 key battleground states and won the popular vote. His improbable return to the White House making him the first president since Grover Cleveland to avenge a re-election loss. Exit polling suggests Trump's victory comes after gaining significant support among Latino voters in critical swing states, especially Latino men, favoring him by 10 points after backing President Biden by 23 points in 2020. Donald Trump delivering a victory speech from Mar-a-Lago on election night.
And we're going to have a great 4 years, and we're going to turn our country around, make it something very special. It lost that little thing called special. We have to make it so. We're going to make this so great. It's the greatest country and potentially the greatest country in the world by far. And right now we're going to just work very hard to get all of that back.
Trump's successful bid for the presidency also coming after he was convicted on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Earlier this year, the now president-elect was also found guilty of trying to conceal hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels, all in a scheme to influence New York voters in the 2016 presidential election. Trump faced multiple legal battles in recent months, but now those criminal cases at the federal level could go away. The Justice Department has begun discussions about potentially winding down the 2 outstanding federal criminal cases against Mr. Trump.
This is what happens when the machine comes after you. What you've seen over the last several years, this is what it looks like. Couldn't stop him. He keeps going forward. He doesn't quit. He's the most resilient, hard-working man I've ever met in my life.
Frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country and maybe beyond.
And after a whirlwind campaign just 107 days in the making, Vice President Kamala Harris conceded the race, calling President-elect Donald Trump to congratulate him. Her historically brief campaign failed to capture enough support among white voters, men, and many first-time voters. During her concession speech, she also emphasized the importance of a peaceful transfer of power.
The fight for our freedom will take hard work, but like I always say, we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work can be joyful work. And the fight for our country is always worth it.
The red wave swept Republicans into power in the Senate, granting President-elect Trump a clear path to appoint a second round of federal judges. U.S. Senator Eric Schmitt is now on the record. Good to have you back with us, Senator. You were at Mar-a-Lago the night of the election. You spoke on stage at the RNC. You've flown with President-elect Trump, and you've recently helped coach him for his debate. If he calls you and asks you to serve in his cabinet or as Attorney General, are you telling him no?
Why did I know you were going to lead with this question? That has not been my focus. I'm flattered that I guess it's been widely reported and you're asking. It's never been the reason why I've been helping, and I want to make sure they get off to a great start in January. So again, it's probably a pretty boring answer for you, but I really do. I believe in the movement. I think the American people sort of resoundingly affirmed that. They want a secure border. They want a strong economy that works for them. They want to be respected around the world and safe at home. And that's the only reason I was doing all that stuff, and I hope to be able to help in January as well.
Well, we'll ask you about your job you have now. Should Rick Scott lead the Senate?
You know what? We're going back next week. I supported Rick last time. There's 3 people running. I have not made a decision. That's the God's honest truth. I'm talking to, even today, to all 3 candidates who are running to find out if their vision reflects, I think, where the people are at. And also there's some internal reforms I'd like to see. I'd like to see a more open amendment process, more people allowed to get involved so you don't end up with these omnibus bills. And by the way, that means Republicans and Democrats get to present ideas. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm looking for in a new majority leader, and we'll see next week.
Current Department of Justice policy does not treat the 1873 Comstock Act and its obscenity provisions that would ban abortion pills as active statute. They treat it as more of a dead letter. But Senator and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance penned a letter to the AG and urged him to change that policy, to crack down on abortion pills and their mailing across state lines. The FDA considers those medications safe and effective. You did not sign on to that letter. Senator Hawley did. Do you agree the federal government should ban abortion pills?
Well, I think that it ought to be, what we're dealing with, I think, is safety. I think that Senator Vance's concern was regarding safety. I'd probably have to look more closely at that. But the truth of the matter is that Plan B is never at risk. Contraception's never been at risk. The states are going to decide ultimately what their abortion policy is. Missouri's weighed in. I would expect that there'll be a countermeasure to that. It's going to play itself out over a matter of decades, I think, in this country, which is where it always should have been. The Supreme Court should have never taken that debate away from the people. The people are getting a chance to weigh in now.
Would you vote to make an IVF coverage mandate federal law?
Well, I'd like to see the language, but in principle, I do support having greater access to IVF. And I've never shied away from taking on the insurance companies. When I was elected, St. Louis County State Senator, one of the first things I did was took on big insurance companies to make sure autism, a treatment for autism was covered and mandated. So I'm not afraid of taking on the insurance companies. I support that in principle, and we'll see what the actual language looks like.
All right, Senator Schmidt, we look forward to talking to you again soon once the new Congress is sworn in. Thanks for your time.
All right, Mark, take care.
Congressman-elect Wesley Bell is now on the record. Congratulations on your victory Tuesday night. Where did Democrats go wrong?
It was a tough night, obviously. I think what we see in the political climate is that we are very much divided along political lines, but we're closely divided. And so I think that there is a palette for getting results, which means you got to work together. And so I think even though Republicans had a much better night than we did, I think that it's clear that voters want folks that are going to get things done and actually answer the kitchen table question.
Congress does have oversight of the executive branch. That's one of its core functions.
Checks and balances, absolutely.
As we sit here talking to you today, we still don't know yet which party will control the Speaker's gavel. We should know that soon, but as we sit here today, we don't know that yet. The Department of Justice is winding down its investigations of President-elect Donald Trump. Jack Smith, the special counsel, has compiled countless hours of witness testimony, of evidence. Some of it he's made public in court filings. To what extent can you investigate, interrogate the past actions of President-elect Trump if Republicans hold the gavel?
Certainly it would be more difficult, but I do believe in the strength of our institutions. I think that this is the greatest democracy the world has seen, and it's going to be tested, and the pressure points are going to be pressed, but I believe that our institutions, I believe that our democracy will stand. But I'll say this, we're going to have to fight to make it stand. And when those core values are pressed, we're going to have to stand and take our message to the American people, because I believe that at the end of the day, everyone is vested in this democracy and wants to see this, the greatest democracy the world has seen, continue. And so, the job doesn't change.
As you sit here today, you're a prosecutor. Have you seen enough evidence or witness testimony in Jack Smith's court filings to say with any degree of confidence that Donald Trump has already committed high crimes and misdemeanors worthy of impeachment? Those are past actions. Can you impeach a president for something he did before he assumed office?
So as the St. Louis County prosecutor, which is still my job, I'm still laser focused on this region. I have not had the opportunity to do a deep dive into Jack Smith's investigation. There is, with respect to the Oversight Committee in Congress, those things will happen. But right now,
can you get more specific? Those things. Are you saying that if Democrats hold the gavel now or in 2 years, that there will be an impeachment investigation or inquiry?
I'm not ready to go there.
Do you have interest in work like that?
You know what? My primary focus is the St. Louis region and regional growth, moving this region forward. Now, with that said, I think we're putting the cart before the horse when we start talking about those things
Well, we're
before
not.
the president's even
With
sworn
respect,
in.
we're not. The Supreme Court has said that the only institution left to investigate or hold a president accountable, if not the Department of Justice, is the Congress. Yeah. And you hold a seat soon in that Congress.
And if we find, if we find that there was wrongdoing or by any office holder, then I believe the Congress, as well as myself, would do their duty. But I just think it's premature to have those conversations before the Congress, the 119th Congress is sworn in, before the soon-to-be president is sworn in. I think we got to focus on the things that we can get done, because what I do believe is that what folks are tired of is the political discussions that don't focus on the things that matter to them. Working class folks care about education, they care about health care, they care about being able to provide for their family and public safety. And I think we need to get back to having those conversations as well. Not to say that those other conversations aren't important, but let's really focus on the things that matter to working class families.
I wish we had more time. Congressman-elect Wesley Bell, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
We're back in a moment. Voters overthrow Missouri's abortion ban, setting the stage for a bitter series of legal fights over how courts might translate the constitutional amendment and its impact on current Missouri state laws that restrict the procedure. Planned Parenthood immediately filed suit, asking judges to block the enforcement of some of those abortion restrictions on the books. In Jefferson City, Republican lawmakers are already drafting new language to find ways to bring back the ban. Soon, you can legally cast a sports bet in Missouri. Voters narrowly adopt Amendment 2. The razor-thin margin could mean a recount if a contesting party were to challenge and agreed to pay for it. Missouri has until December 1st of 2025 to implement sports betting at casinos. Industry experts expect you could place bets sooner. One of the most popular things on the ballot, a pay raise. Minimum wage workers will get a boost from $12.30 an hour to $13.75 in the new year and up to $15 an hour in 2026. 57% of Missouri voters also approving 1 week of guaranteed paid sick leave in a win for labor. We hear from the author of a book on President Ronald Reagan next. Author and historian Max Boot joins us now after publishing this recent book about the former President Ronald Reagan. It's a pleasure to have you with us. First of all, do you have a sense of what Ronald Reagan would have thought about the election results in 2024?
Gosh, really hard to say, but I think it's fair to say that, he was a very different kind of Republican than Donald Trump. I mean, remember, Reagan was somebody who was pro-immigration, pro-free trade, pro-NATO, pro-standing up to Russian aggression. And he was somebody who had a very sunny, optimistic vision of the country and tried to bring people together rather than divide them. Of course, he was also a loyal Republican for many decades, and I'm sure he would always be happy to see the Republican Party winning elections, but I suspect he would be very puzzled and troubled by the current configuration of the Republican Party, which is so different from the one that he led.
If there was one Reagan principle that Donald Trump violated more than any other, it might have been his 11th commandment.
Yes, Reagan often said, "Thou shalt not speak ill of a fellow Republican." And of course, Trump does that all the time, trashing Mitch McConnell or Nikki Haley or others who have criticized him from within the Republican Party. So he clearly does not feel the same loyalty to the Republican Party that the Republican loyalty shows to him. And that's, I think, very different from Reagan.
We journalists are often tasked with writing that first draft of history, and sometimes amid our stutters and stammers and knee-jerk reactions to try and get it right, we make mistakes. We leave it to smarter people like you, authors and historians, to synthesize all that and give us the final draft of history. Is it too soon to say yet how history will reflect back on this sea change, Donald Trump's ascent to the GOP and its shift within the party?
Oh, yeah, no, I think it's way too soon to pass any judgment on what Trump means or how history will reflect upon it, because obviously he's just, hasn't even started his second term, so we have no idea what he's going to do. I think it takes decades after a president leaves office to pass any kind of judgment based on historical hindsight with any kind of objectivity, and I think that's something I've been able to do with my Reagan book, Reagan, His Life and Legend. But that's, on Ronald Reagan's presidency, which was in the 1980s, which was, of course, many decades ago. And I think it will take another 30 years at least to pass that kind of objective judgment on the Trump presidency.
And a lot of people that pick up your book and thumb through the foreword of it and some of the acknowledgments will find that many people close to Ronald Reagan had very high praise for how you captured his life, his spirit, and his work. Were there things in your work as you were penning this book that surprised you, things you discovered that you didn't expect to find about Ronald Reagan?
I think one of the big things that I found was that he was much more pragmatic than people realized, and we've been talking about some of that already. But he was somebody who was remembered as kind of a conservative ideologue, somebody who animated the Republican base, and yet once he was in office, he often pivoted to the center, as he did, beginning in his term as governor of California in 1967, when he immediately signed a budget that greatly raised taxes and spending in order to deal with California's fiscal situation. And then he signed one of the most liberal abortion laws in the country, and made deals with Jesse Unruh, the Democratic Speaker of the California Assembly, just as he later made deals with Tip O'Neill, the Democratic Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. And he was not somebody who believed that you can govern from an ideologically pure perspective. He always said, he'd rather get 80% of what he wanted rather than go over the cliff with his flags flying, as he said so many conservatives want to do. And so he was actually, I think, much more moderate and pragmatic in office than people realized. And I think the ultimate expression of that was in his second term as president, when he struck up a friendship and worked so constructively with Mikhail Gorbachev, the leader of the Soviet Union, to peacefully end the Cold War and to reduce the levels of nuclear armaments. That's not something anybody expected from this hardline conservative who had been, preaching about the evils of communism for decades. And yet Reagan was able to see that Gorbachev was a different kind of communist leader, somebody that he could do business with, even though a lot of people on the right were skeptical. Reagan was convinced. And I think that's a historical gamble that paid off, and ultimately is a tribute to Reagan's own pragmatism and moderation, and that he was willing to transcend ideology to get things done. And that's, I think, in the end, why he will be remembered as a great president.
And those stories are so well told within the pages of that book you wrote. Thank you for joining us to help break down some of it. Max Boot from New York, thanks again.
Really appreciate being on. Thank you.
He answers the question, is the party of Ronald Reagan dead? And much more expanded interviews up online at KSDK.com. Plus, tune into 5 Plus Monday night for an expanded version of this episode. We're back in a moment to check the record. In times of turbulence or transition, people often look for something familiar, something they trust to help reorient and ground their sense of direction. Maybe that's why they call a steady news voice an anchor. After every major election, voters wonder what the future might hold. Candidates, after all, campaign on promises, and President-elect Donald Trump in his victory speech said his second term would focus on his motto, promises made, promises kept. So let's check the record. That long list of promises includes mass deportations, slapping costly tariffs on foreign imports, purging the federal government of tens of thousands of employees deemed disloyal or inconvenient roadblocks to his agenda. He's threatened prosecution of his political opponents or critics within his own party. And lately, he said he wouldn't mind so much if an assassin's barrage of bullets ripped through a pool of reporters. He wondered aloud about revoking a broadcast license of TV stations whose reporters criticize him, or perhaps charging them a fee. Is it free speech if it comes with a presidential tax? News editors across the country are combing through old clippings to check the record themselves and find an anchor upon which they can rely. The editor at ProPublica found one in the pages of an 1896 copy of the New York Times. The paper's new owner at the time pledged its reporters would, quote, give the news impartially, without fear or favor, regardless of party, sect, or interests involved. That's the whole job. That's our promise today still, to fight for your right to know without fear or favor. The players are changing. The game remains the same. And until the same time next week, we're off the record.